Hey, what's up, everybody? I just had an awesome sit-down conversation with Howard Cadmus. He is the owner, along with his wife, Tara, of Sweet Jenny's in Williamsville. Most of you probably know it. Also owns 1811 Comics in the same old mill there in Williamsville. And very intelligent guy, hilarious guy. I mean, honestly, probably one of the funniest guys, if not the funniest guys we've ever had on here. But also has really great perspective. Thinks about life, I think, in a unique way. And I think whether you're an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, or just you want to know about how this guy thinks and how he's made everything work there in Williamsville, I think you're going to find this really, really interesting. Be sure to check it out. Listen to the whole thing. You're going to love it. As always, if you like these conversations, really helps us if you can like, subscribe, follow, do all the things on all the platforms you listen, follow us on social media. And look, as always, you know what I'm about to say. This episode, as always, is brought to you by Richmond Vona Personal Injury Attorneys. Yeah, I get it. It's my law firm. I'm plugging it. But we can't do this without them. So again, enjoy the conversation. I think you're going to get some good laughs out of this one, but you also learn a lot. So again, enjoy.
All right, should I get serious? You want to get serious?
No, you don't have to, I don't actually want to get serious at all. If you don't want to, we're
All right,
good.
let's get sillier.
Gentlemen, we are rolling.
Yeah, no, we were thanks for being here. Obviously, we're already off to a great start. Let's just jump into it. What do you want to talk about?
I was going to freeze just to be funny. No, really.
You should. It was funny because I was like,
Are these on?
He was fine 2 minutes
What?
ago. Yeah.
Whatever.
All of a sudden, we got Walt Disney here. He's frozen.
Yeah.
No, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, like I love the story of like what I know so far, and looking to. You're excited to dive into it more, and I was just hearing you talk about, first big weekend, right? It was really beautiful outside. Now we're into June now, and you're seeing the lines of people lining up at Sweet Jenny's. I got to imagine, like, especially with your background, which we'll talk about, it's got to still be like a little surreal. Like, this is your life, and it sounds like you're doing things that you love, and all these people are coming out to support. I mean, it's got to be pretty cool.
So you are so good at what you do that there was like 7 questions and things I wanted to answer in that first question. I do feel that I'm very blessed because for those of you who don't know out there in listening and watching land, I have a chocolate and ice cream shop that's in a 215-year-old historic building. Upstairs, I have a comic book and toy store. When you walk out of our building and go right to Glens Falls, there's a waterfall right behind my building. And then housed on that same location is also a dojo with a yoga studio on top and law offices with wonderful tenants. So yes, what I do as far as making and creating and selling chocolate and ice cream, and then finding and cultivating a cool collection and helping people to find comics and toys they like, it's all wonderful. And it was all born out of the fact that I always ask myself 2 questions, and this is true, and I've said it many times across different mediums, but I'd like to say since I was young, and I think that's true. Sometimes we convince ourselves of things, but I know in some form I've been asking myself, but I think I've probably tweaked it a little bit as I've gained experience and knowledge in life. One question is if I had unlimited resources, meaning that there was an endless pool of money. I used to say $1 million, but now that's basically just groceries for the year and putting your kid in hockey or something. So if you had unlimited resources, an unlimited pool of money, what would you do? And the second one that I ask myself, and we had a conversation with someone on your crew minutes ago about health issues. And we've gone through it or known someone that we're close to or that we love that have had them. I always say if I found out that my time was limited, conversely, that I was dying and I was given a very short period of time left on this earth, what would I do or what would I change? And I use that to guide every decision I make, and then I also use it as a way to check if I'm where I want to be in life, if I'm doing what I want, and if I'm happy and feeling fulfilled. I'm blessed to say that for the most part, I mean, my interpersonal relationships are hard. Sometimes marriage can be difficult, but every other facet of what I do business-wise, I would not change a single thing.
So I got to imagine, though, well, first off, that's great advice. I mean, I think you hear a lot of like really intelligent people talking about that, because what do you really do? Like, you're drilling down to what's my passion? What am I really happy about? Right. Because life is short. It can be taken away from you at any second. Right. I got to imagine, though, you were at a point in your life at some point in the past where you were not operating true to those principles, and that kind of kicked into gear. maybe some changes that led you to where you are now. Is that fair?
I don't think I've ever looked at it that way. I think it's all been building towards where I am.
Sure.
I can say that almost every opportunity that I had or every decision I made stemmed from something else where I put myself in the right position. But I've honestly never thought about that. And I'll circle back to the last time I can remember things really being out of my control or, things that I really wanted to change. And my therapist would say that's where my trauma comes from. But I think that my belief is, and I try to keep this with me on any given day, that you are where you're supposed to be. And I know that goes counter to, well, what changes can I make? But what I mean by that is you have to look for the opportunity in everything. And even when something's bad, right, like the old adage, not every day is good, but there's good in every day. I think you still need to say, is this happening for a reason? So let's take, for instance, you're driving to an appointment and there's traffic. I really do convince myself, and I believe this is true at my core, that if you had been 2 minutes earlier, you might have been in a car accident. Or if you had gotten someplace earlier, things would change. You wouldn't run into the person you're supposed to run into. So in regards to when I was at a point where I was like, oh, I'm working someplace I hate, I really got to make a change. I tried to make the best of everything I did, but always with an eye on how I could make it better.
Sure.
And I hope that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great perspective, right? It's because there's so much you can't control.
Right.
So why spend so much time, as a lot of people do, and we're all guilty of it at times, just like stewing in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, look at it the other way. Have you always been like that? Where does that come from, you think?
No, I mentioned therapy again, and I want to just give a plug for everyone out there for therapy, because I think that it's necessary for all of us, whether it's somebody, you have a strong family unit and you're talking to one of your parents, both of your parents, whether it's your friends who are able to actually give you quality advice, or whether it's a professional. I'm at the point I use professional help. I'm not, it's like if it was a tier system, like I'm in the NHL of needing help. So, but that's nothing to be ashamed of, because we all struggle. And I think it's come with a lot of understanding about myself. I'm by nature an introspective person, which is good. I try to figure out, why am I doing something? Why am I not doing something? But in regards to what we were just talking about in that philosophy, I think, it was born out of knowing that control is a fallacy with anything. I could leave here today. Unfortunately, something bad could happen to me. I could go to my 6-month appointment and I was just fine, and I could find out that I'm sick. I could get a text from my wife that she left for the Subway guy. So anything is, and it's funny because I think most of the stress that we have in regards to our jobs and our businesses are born out of that need to be able to really control everything, and that fear of the unknown. And I think we waste so much time, especially because, I'm making it difficult for people to follow my trains of thought. But while I accept that there's no control, I also plan for all inevitabilities. So it's contrary in that as well. Like when I said last time about accepting things and wanting to change them. I accept that we have no control, but I always still come up in my brain with like 10 different ways to get out of something. But what I do is I say, hush, brain, like that. I have to say it in that voice. I say, shh, it's okay, brain. And
I'm the same exact way. I need to learn how to speak to my brain though, like that.
Yeah, that's what I say.
What do you think is, so if you have somebody listening who's like, oh man, like this all sounds great. I want to think like that. I want to feel like this. What do you think are maybe like the first steps to getting there? If you're like somebody who's like just worried about everything and always kind of maybe like down in the dumps about stuff and like has that like active, like loud brain, like what are like the first like little baby steps you would say, hey, maybe test this out?
Well, first of all, I hope people are still listening. I don't know if they'll be drawn into this. That's good. But I can answer it, but I feel like a hypocrite in that I think many of us, even someone who's like a personal trainer who's like, jacked, is like, I feel like a fraud. Like sometimes we have this imposter syndrome. You asking me what I would tell someone is difficult because it's hard for me. But I guess if I was to say to people, what can you do? I really feel that being able to make any change or being able to better yourself comes from just being genuine. Yeah. And I think that why we've had some success with our business, not to plug our businesses, so I won't say the name at this moment, is that when you're genuine with yourself, then you're able to not only do the things you love, but see what you're doing. Because I think a lot of times we'll shift blame and we think to ourselves, we have like this cognitive dissonance where we're like, I couldn't have done that, or everyone else is wrong, or like, I don't do that. Certainly I think any change, any acceptance, any realization about things that are going on, any betterment that you're going to do comes from really looking at yourself in a very honest way. Sometimes you can be overly critical. I guess that's difficult. It's a hard line to walk. I know for myself physically, I'm overly critical. I know, like, I'll replay conversations. Like, every moment of this conversation, I'm going to replay in the car on the way back to work and tonight in my bed while I'm trying to drift off to sleep. But I think that with anything, and because I keep, sort of talking in contradictions, which if you really look at it do make sense, I think it's balance. So genuine, right, with yourself, honesty, and then balance, because I think it's important in all things, balance, right? If you have a life where you're really successful and you're go, my sons, I had my kids sort of late in life. They're a little young. They're 6 and 10, Carter and Cole. And they always say, like, I want to be like all kids, I want to be famous. Like, I'd love to be famous. And I go, that's a job too. Like, those people are touring, if you're a musician, all the time. That's what you're doing. If you're an athlete, you're training or you're totally participating in events all the time. So even at that, what we say in our society is the pinnacle of success, there's not the balance that you need in order to be able to step back and be happy. And on the other side, if you were given all the free time to do what you wanted, I don't think it would be fulfilling. So I think to answer your question in a very long-winded and roundabout way, just be honest with yourself, be genuine with who you are all the time, look at your own flaws, and then find a balance that works for you. So I hope that answers it.
I mean, that's a great answer. I mean, balance is an interesting word. It means something different to everybody. When I was thinking about having you come in, I'm like, wow, I mean, you must have really figured out how to balance. A lot of stuff. You have the chocolate shop, you have Sweet Jenny's, you have the memorabilia shop. You got pro wrestlers coming in and out, which I'm definitely going to talk about. You're, we'll call it like a lawyer by trade. You're a Williamsville prosecutor. You're a husband, a father. Yeah, talk to me about balance. That's wild. But you seem like very like grounded and just comfortable in the situation you're in.
I am grounded. I never asked my mom if it stopped all those years ago, so I'm still grounded. I probably should have asked her. I probably can leave my room. So I joke when people ask me in the shop, because they find out that I work on average 70 hours a week. It sounds terrible, but it's not because my kids are with me in the shop or I'm taking the breaks I need. So my personal life and my work life aren't necessarily separate, but not in a bad way. There's a blending of it. There's a melding to it where I do find that balance. I think that the key for me is to go back to where we started, living a life that I love. So I don't think that I'm overworked or underworked. I'm right where I need to be to handle everything that happens. But, for instance, if a wrestler comes to visit and I'm there at the signing, that's not work. I'm having a good time. And then I'm hanging out with them throughout the year with these different people. We send chocolates to their families. They comment on my things. We go out to dinner. It's enjoyable. If I'm having a conversation upstairs in the comic shop, 1811 Comics, with a family, or we're taking a silly picture for socials, that's fun. It's not work. So I think that the balance comes from the fact that I've melded the things in a way that makes sense. And what I was going to say is, when people say, how do you find the time? I always joke that I don't drink and I don't watch TV. And I say that in a very tongue-in-cheek way to say that some people spend an inordinate amount of time doing things that, if they enjoy them, that's fine, but maybe their time could be better spent elsewhere. And I try to get my kids to understand that. If you're on a tablet getting, you can do it for a little bit of time, but let's say you had no limits and you let a kid just play unlimited and win all these things. How does it translate into the real world? Are they getting paid for it? Are they? Right. So I kind of feel sometimes with the habits that people have or the things that they pursue, it's sort of the same thing. And I don't want to get a bunch of hate mail for people who watch 5 or 6 hours of television a night, but if you did Duolingo for 40 minutes of that time, or you took a walk outside with your kids for 40 minutes of that time, or you pursued the project you needed to get done so it didn't stress you out when it wasn't finished, those are the things that you do. I think those are the habits. And again, sorry, it takes me a long time to get to where I'm going, but those are the habits that you cultivate where you say to yourself, what's the best use of my time? And for me, the most effective and the most enjoyable, which is important, use of my time is the things that I do even when they're just tangentially related to the business, but that are still fun. Yeah. You know, it's funny, when I first took on so much, like had the practice, and then we had a shop in Snyder, and we had a shop in the Village, and we had all these things going on, I would say to myself, okay, I have to go run, this is so silly, but I have to go run and get paper towel. Like I have to go to Walgreens because, you know, our order didn't come in from whatever distributor we were ordering, and we were short on something silly. But that was fun to me. It was an adventure. So I think with a mind towards your work and the things you have to do being adventure, and a mind towards using what you deem to be your free time as effectively as possible, I think that's how you can achieve that balance. I think sometimes what we get wrapped up in is the concept of, well, I did A, I deserve B. I worked 40 hours, I deserve this many hours, but that's not what life is going to deal you. So I guess if you were more like, I worked 40 hours, sure, I had to mow the lawn and do other things, but it was relaxing to mow the lawn. There was a zen kind of feeling in getting that accomplished, and now I'm having fun with my kids. I guess don't clock the time, you know? Yeah. I guess don't count the time, make the time count. So.
No, look, I love your perspective, and I think, I think you're aware enough to know that it's rare. You grew up in New York City, right?
I did, yeah.
Does growing up there, I mean, I lived in New York City for like 10 years. I wasn't born and raised there. I lived there a long time, got to know people who were born and raised there. It's a very different upbringing, especially, and that is a very vague kind of sentence, because if you grow up on the Upper East Side versus Upper West Side versus, parts of Brooklyn, it's all Bronx, like it's all very different. Can you talk a little bit about your upbringing and whether or not you think, if it's kind of led to this perspective that you have?
So I always skirt around the details of how I grew up. I give people the basics, that I was born in Brooklyn. We did live in the projects. When I was a little older, we moved to Middletown, which is north of the city, Orange County, near Newburgh and Poughkeepsie, and I mentioned those things. What I would say is I grew up on public assistance. I grew up we didn't have much, and so has it influenced what I do? Sure, because I just never want to feel that again. But it also gave me a different sort of drive, where I think all I know how to do is hustle. So what I mean by that is, even on a Sunday, if I'm with my kids and I go to a flea market, I'm still like, oh my gosh, I could buy this box of things for $5 and make like $32. And my wife is like, well, we make money. And I still always feel that desire to live that way. And I think also there's always a fear in me to ever be in that position again, but a confidence that if every single thing was taken away from me, I'd still find a way. Whether I had to go to BJ's and buy candy bars and sell them out of a box to people, there would always be a way to make money. There would always be a way to avoid living like that. But so I guess it helped in that I like living well, and I do, like I said, have that fear, but I guess I know that I'd be okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Because I'm interested now, now it's starting to make a little bit more sense now, because when I was looking at everything, I'm like, wow, obviously you went to law school, you went to UB, right?
I finished there. Yep.
That's how you ended up here, basically.
Finished law school.
So you go to law school. I'm guessing you start practicing, and then now you end up buying Sweet Jenny's, and you buy the mill that it's in now, and I just would love for you to talk a little bit about how you decided to do that, why you weren't freaked out about doing that, right? Because I'm guessing you didn't have any experience making ice cream, making chocolate. How does this all come about?
That's a good question. I did actually have experience making ice cream chocolate. When I was very young, like I talked about hustling, I had a lot of jobs too. I was fortunate in that there was a place near my house that let me work very young sweeping and cleaning, and then I did learn chocolate and ice cream that way. There was a family called the Baffas down there who had me work in their pizza places, first folding boxes and then cooking, and later on, as I'd like to say, when I got my license, and I hope it was the appropriate license, driving truck and doing things. So I did have a background in that. And then also in food service in general, I waited tables and worked in restaurants and was a line cook and things like that. So I did sort of have background. And then my wife, Tara, because when we started the shops, we were married already. She had worked when she worked for the European Union, she studied chocolate over in Europe, and then she worked for Sweet Jenny's when she was younger, chocolate bar, some dessert deli, some other places. So she also had a background, although we come from different upbringings. She grew up in Amherst with means and did those things for S's and G's. I did it because I had no choice, but it's fun because when we meld our styles in regards to the product, the ice cream and the chocolate, and the way we learn to get things done, it's always been a treat. But how it started was the first thing that we did was create Au Pour l'Amour de Chocolat, which was a chocolate shop in Snyder at Main in Harlem. And then I thought it was unfair if I was going to compete with Sweet Jenny's, which had been around since 1985, if I didn't go and have a conversation with Deb Hanni, the then owner of the shop. This was about 16 years ago, because we've owned Sweet Jenny's 16 out of the 41 years it's been around. And so that conversation led to us also then, so having Pour l'Amour and my practice, and then buying Sweet Jenny's, and then she had moved Sweet Jenny's to a location that just really didn't work. And so we were looking for a new location, and then we got wind of the mill buildings. We didn't want to see them torn down. So then the reason I mention this is just how silly it seems that then we had Pour l'Amour, my practice, Sweet Jenny's on Main, and then we put Sweet Jenny's in the mill as well. Yeah. So at one point we had all that going on. So your question was it scary? Yes, but life is scary. Yeah. All the time. When we were first doing that, we didn't have kids. We had been married quite a while with no children. Children came much later in that math, and so I think that was scary because then when you mix kids in, and for anyone who is thinking about children but dragging their feet, there's never the perfect time. If you're going to do it, you just do it. And for anybody out there who has children and for some reason they've lost sight of the fact that they are the most important thing in the world, let me just reiterate that they are the most important thing in the world. Everything kind of shifted and changed for me when that happened, and it's why, as far as my practice, a couple of years ago, I semi-retired. I retired as much as you can from the private practice and that grind, because having the shops, I could be with the boys. Having my practice, I couldn't find that same, It goes back to that balance. I had trouble leaving that stress and that anxiety. Anyone who is in the medical or legal field can tell you that there's things that you carry around with you, and it's hard to just be able to leave those things. So kids were scarier, the shop's not so much, but that's the timeline of how we ended up with so much on our plate, if that kind of paints a clearer picture.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this, 'cause I just saw a clip the other day, and it was somebody talking about entrepreneurship. And so you and I are the same in that, we were professionals and now we are both entrepreneurs. Like, okay, yeah, I did something in the legal field, but you own more business than I do. But the saying was essentially, the message essentially was, entrepreneurship is like basically a roller coaster, and like every day you're convincing yourself that you're going to ruin something. This could be the last day of this. Like, you're going to mess this up. And so I was thinking about this because you're right. Like, as a professional, and I'm sure even non-professionals, a lot of people can. This resonates with them, like that stress, that anxiety you carry around everywhere with you. Do you still feel like that now? Or is it just different? I'm just curious.
Well, every time you ask a question, there's so many different things. You're so good at this. Let me first say it's not a contest about how many businesses, and you're more handsome and taller than I am. So you win in that regard. I'm taller than you. So in regards to your clip, I think that being an entrepreneur is like riding a unicycle and chewing glass, and I think that's. I say it's like catching a falling knife. Yeah, those are the skills that you need to have. So, boy, that's a lot. I always say to people when they ask me if they should get into owning their own business or if they think that this or that would work, I say you want to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, because I sometimes, even with everything we do, especially tax time, that's usually the time we feel the most deflated. We're like, what do we do? You know what I mean? Where's the fortune? Where's but it comes in other ways. I think the rewards aren't always, in being rich, like I said, the rewards are in having a life that's enjoyable. But your question was...
I'm just curious, really, to boil it down. You were professional.
I've been pretty
like
good
this anxiety, carrying all this baggage around. Do you still feel? Are you still carrying it? Maybe it's a different type of baggage, or you feel better about everything.
That's
now?
a really good question. So, what I would say to anybody who wants to be able to have a really strong business is first, and you mentioned you have a side gig. You should never throw all your eggs into one basket, because then you should be worried, because anything can happen. Markets can change, businesses can change. The economy can change, things can happen. We were very fortunate in that we were both working in the legal field when we started with the shops. So we were able to not pull any money from the shops and to keep reinvesting it. Because anyone who thinks that you're not going to have a freezer break or a roof, cave in or something happen or a lawsuit happen, they're fooling themselves. It's always going to happen. It's the reality of the beast. It's the nature of what we do. So you need to be able to live a very austere life as an entrepreneur for a while and really keep that money at hand to be able to weather storms until you're really cooking. That's one thing. The other thing is you have to understand that and I mentioned it in a positive way for me, because that's how I want to look at it. Your life is going to be so intertwined. It's going to be indistinguishable for you where your business ends and your real life starts, your personal life, your home life, and vice versa. Anyone I know who owns a business, I don't know if I can mention people. Russ Salvatore, he's still at his business. He's still there. Still, if he wasn't there, it wouldn't be the same. There's nights where I leave literally 20 minutes before close because I have something, and that's when something will happen. So, I think a healthy dose of reality is important for entrepreneurship. I think that having the ability to, like I said, live well below your means, because you have to be humble. And then I think fear is important because it keeps you, I guess, striving to do better. And what I'll do is I'll just create a scenario to reinforce what I'm saying. If you have a business and you know that the step is loose and you're just like, man, the step, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that can happen is going to happen. Somebody's going to trip and fall, because take the time to fix the step. If you can't do it yourself, find somebody to fix the step or put up a sign around the step. Don't ignore the step, right? Because that's, no matter what, that's step is what's right. That's how it works. So I hope that gives a clearer answer that you can't put things off. With a job, it's not really my responsibility, or it probably won't go south. With owning your own business, it will, and you really can't take those chances. So I hope that answers.
No, that makes I think it's a great answer. I think there's this misconception too that after the business is going a little bit, that they got it all figured out. It must be fine. They're just laughing it up, doing their thing. It's like it just never ends.
Yeah, I have not reached the laughing it up, doing my thing stage of the business. I don't think it ever happens. No, I think what you do is, again, when you have to go to you do it. You own your own business so that one, you can wear T-shirts every day. That's what I do. Two, so that when you have a play, you can hopefully get that shift covered and you go to your kids' play. And then three, that you have a little bit of control. But as we mentioned, ultimately, you don't control the big things, but you have control in that. If you see a trend happening in the market, or you see that, you can tighten your belt or you can change it. We're unique in our shop in that if it looked like ice cream, there was a problem, prices go up, but then we lean into chocolate. Or the time of year we adjust, we make adjustments. Or if it seems like, collectibles are doing a little better, well, then I'll put some more of my time into promoting 1811 Comics over Sweet Jenny's. For that little bit of time. So I think when you diversify with anything, right, a financial person, which I'm not, would say, go ahead and, diversify your portfolio. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Well, as of right now, every guest who comes on here is paying to be on here. This is my new side hustle.
I love it.
We can diversify. I'm just kidding.
I love it.
No, yeah, no, I think, it's smart. And then I always tell people too, like we hear it all the times, like you better, whatever it is for you, you better be super passionate about what you're doing, because all to your point, like the money's not what you think it is. It takes way longer than you think it does. It's way more painful than you think it's going to be, all the things. But if you love what you're doing and you look at it, I think the way you are, it makes it all worthwhile. It's also too, right? You probably get this too, like, especially as like an attorney. I was talking to one of our younger attorneys the other day, such a great young attorney and just trying to get better every day. But with that, right, comes frustration, right? Of course, because you're like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And sometimes, as I had somebody do with me, you have to like have someone coach you and put the brakes on you and make you understand that it's good to focus on certain things. But I think, my message is always like too, like be careful with the always looking to be at this level or this level or that level, because really all you have is where you are right now. Like you should set goals and keep pushing towards those goals. But if you're always only looking ahead and never really enjoying what you're doing now, whether it's, oh, wow, great, like we had a good quarter and I'm able to afford to do these things for my family, or, hey, it was a down quarter, but at least I have time to spend with my family, whatever. If you're not doing that, what's the point? I mean, you're going to wake up being 80 years old and say, oh, crap, like in my head, I never got to where I thought I wanted to be, but everyone else around me is like, that's crazy. And you just never enjoyed the ride.
Two really good points. One is, you need to celebrate your successes. And to come back to the therapy thing, one thing that I've been told I don't do is that I don't have enough, I don't always let that joy in. Yeah. I'm certainly not a person, because I am driven in a certain way. And while I enjoy my life, I don't let that joy in. So for, some of us don't make the time. Like if a friend calls and says, I want to do lunch, sometimes I do worry about how it would fit into my schedule, or then I'd have to leave the shop. And so that is a weakness of, I guess, the structure of my life. And you're right. If you're not like, wow, like I did this, or wow, I'm here, and you're not sitting back and you're not celebrating it, then all you're doing is striving and you're never enjoying. Yeah. And to your other point about small business or being an entrepreneur, not always, it never gets easier. It never seems to find its balance. I think that's anything, because we build up these ideas of how things should be if we're not careful, like fatherhood. I love being a dad, but I mean, there's times where it's a lot of work, and then the payoff is that my 10-year-old son tells me I'm not cool, or he doesn't want to spend time with me, or you're fighting with him and he's like, I want to live some, Those are the things that happen. I think with anything, you can't wear rose-colored glasses. I mentioned marriage to you guys before we started talking, and I think if you're not recommitting yourself every day that's what you want, it's one of the hardest jobs you'll ever have. Mm-hmm. Whenever young people come into the shop and they're engaged or they're talking about their relationship, I give them one piece of advice. I say, do you want some unsolicited advice from someone who's a little older? And they say yes. If they say no, it probably wouldn't stop me anyway. And I say, if one of you were sick and you found out that the person needed a kidney, if you wouldn't make that sacrifice, meaning that you wouldn't be able to say, okay, I could also, get sick. I could become infirmed. It could possibly kill me, right? Worst case scenario. If you wouldn't do that, then you don't love someone unconditionally, and you won't make it through the other things that life will throw at you: bankruptcies, cancer diagnosis, miscarriages, things that happen to all of us that we don't always speak about. So I tell people that, and I think with the conversation we're having, it equates to anyone who has aspirations of owning their business too. If you're not willing to, it sounds so intense, right? Give your kidney. If you're not willing to, I guess, love that what you do unconditionally, if you're not willing to make that sacrifice, I think sacrifice is the main word, then it's not going to work for you. Yeah. And also you're going to resent it. Mm-hmm. Because I think the things that, as I mentioned about the work-life balance, I think resentment is one of the hardest things, because then it just starts to fester. So I think with anything, with your job, with your business, with your kids, with the person you love, with your staff, etc., if you are always feeling that you're being shortchanged and you're not getting what you deserve, then you're always going to resent it. So I think it's important not to have that feelings. But
no, that's great advice. Yeah. So I need to know a little bit more about the mill. So I've been to Sweet Jenny's many times. I live kind of down the street, and I think we just kind of take it for granted that it's there, that it's standing. I mean, is it it's one of the oldest buildings in Erie County, right?
It is. It's one of the oldest commercial structures. It's 215 years old. It was built in 1811. Someone check my math. I'm really bad at numbers. It was built in 1811. It was a timber mill. Then it was a grist mill, feed mill, cement mill, and then cider mill. But because people live for such a short amount of time, they remember the cider mill because that was about the 50s on, basically. Mm-hmm. But yes, lots of different iterations, lots of different things in there, but it's always been kind of the center of that community. It's called the Williamsville Mill. Jonas Williams built it, then sold it. And I always like to say that then the Miller family had it. There were other times where it kind of changed hands because that's how things sort of went down back then. But it ended up resting with basically one family. And the Miller and the Youngs were such an integral part of that area, like Ed Young's Hardware and then the Millers. And in 2005, the buildings faced foreclosure and the village bought them, which was an unusual move at the time for a municipality to buy 3 buildings. Because in essence, it's 3 buildings. They can't be subdivided. They're all part of one parcel. It's the mill, which is what everybody recognizes as the water mill, or Sweet Jenny's since 2014 when we started occupying, summer 2016 when we legally purchased the buildings. The smaller red building, which was a timber shed, it was open on one side back in the day, which is now Mizuchi Dojo and 716 Yoga. And then the gray building, which was the Zent House, which was moved down there in the 50s because the family had also owned that and sits on a solid slab of concrete, which is now law offices. So those buildings were purchased by them and then sat vacant and really fell into terrible disrepair. And then, like I said, we got under contract. It was a little difficult in 2014 because of the State Historic Preservation Organization, or SHPO. We also helped the village. They wrote grants to be able to do the Spring Street Revitalization Project, which turned out really great. And there's a lot of green infrastructure and projects we did to stop rainwater from damaging the flora and the fauna in the park. And then, it took a long time, but 2016 was when we closed. I'll never forget that day. But talking about not celebrating, I just went back to work. Yeah, I signed the paper. I got this insane mortgage on these buildings. And, it's funny. That's kind of a funny thing, too, to go back to when you asked me about growing up. It's not an exaggeration that I really had not much. And so when I first got approved for a house when I was a practicing attorney, I was like, what? These guys are... I looked around all like, what? Sure, yeah. And then same thing with the mill, because we did get the 3 buildings for $450,000, which was good, but then it required another $450,000 worth of, so about $1 million project. So when they're like, yeah, you're cleared for closing, you're like, what?
Really?
I am? Really?
Let's get out of here before I figure out what they did.
Wow.
Run, Forrest, run.
But it's worked out great. And I mean, I think that we've shown at this point, because the community was on board and was really excited for us rather than a big developer to get the buildings and to do the projects. I think we've shown that we've done a pretty good job of being stewards for the buildings.
Yeah.
And, every year Jenny's has grown and the other businesses are doing great too. So the buildings are all fixed. The garden on the side was something we just finally got time to do, and everything's really, really great.
Yeah, we talk a lot about Sweet Jenny's, and it's especially now with the weather nice and the place is just exploding. Talk to me. I want to hear about 1811 though, because I've been in there multiple times checking stuff out. You got a lot of interesting stuff. Like we talked about earlier, you've had a lot of WWF superstars come through. I was a huge wrestling fan growing up.
Come on, man.
No, I mean,
they want you back.
No, well, so I don't hate it. Like I have a good buddy of mine. I'm not going to name him because I don't think he's embarrassed, but he's a partner at like a really big law firm. He's obsessed with wrestling. He's going to love that I'm calling him out. Actually, I'll call him out. His name's Ricky Luthra.
I love it.
He's a partner at Lippis. He's not shy about it, nor should he be. So he brings me to events with him and stuff. It's a lot of fun. But I'm guessing you like grew up on comic books, or you must have had this love for a long time, because it's a pretty niche, let's say, for the lack of a better term, business to get into. I just love to hear about it.
So again, the way my brain works. Yes, you always ask a question that's so good. I will say, first of all, and then I'll get to the shop. I really will. Jenny's, fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately for the fact that any business should function well, unfortunately in that I really do sometimes just want to go home and be with my kids. It's always busy because we have a model where we're back in Lexington co-ops. We're in different, we're doing things that make sure that it's never slow. So people always say, oh, it's your season. Every season is our season.
Yeah.
The lines for the ice cream are a different beast. They're much longer. And then sometimes we float between anywhere from 19 to 22 to 37 employees, and some have 37. It's a lot of kids. There's 7 kids scooping ice cream anytime. Now, to answer your question about 1811 Comics, yes, there's comic books, toys, collectibles. I mean, it's wonderful. The whole point of
awesome old candy and gum.
Yeah.
You see downstairs too.
Well, the point of the shop was to evoke a nostalgia or a feeling when you walk up of, oh my gosh, like I had this, I remember this.
Yeah.
This would make me happy, because that's in essence what we do downstairs. You know, the ice cream and the chocolate are there for you if you're having a hard day, if you're going through something, or if you're celebrating and it's a party and we've made you an ice cream cake for a birthday or a graduation. Upstairs, it's the same thing. You know, humans are hunters and gatherers, and it's hard to find that purpose anymore because you can press a button and get something. Mm-hmm. When you actually have a purpose, whether it's collecting Pez or Legos or looking for that toy you used to have, I guess it ignites something inside you. It fills something inside you that is just irreplaceable. But to the point of the wrestlers, what happened is when we opened in the building, we decided that it was a good use of space on the second floor to have these sorts of things, because it's rated for maybe 30 people. It is still an old building and there are restrictions to everything. And so we thought, okay, here's what we'll do. You know, we'll supplement the ice cream and the chocolate with comics and toys. The wrestlers came about because I had a buddy in 2014 when we were occupying that space before we closed on the buildings, who said, I have, and I can say their names, I have, oh my gosh, I can't because I can't remember. I have Brutus the Barber Beefcake. That was the very first one. And he's in town. What would you pay to have him come by? And I said, well, what does he charge? And I thought to myself, is it thousands of dollars? Is it a kidney? Because somehow I always want to give a kidney but it
Brutus,
but it wasn't. Yeah, he probably needs it. It wasn't though. It was a minuscule amount of money. And I said, I would pay that just to hang out with him. So we paid the money, and we had very little lead time to tell everybody that he was coming. The line was down the sidewalk, and I thought, wow. And so in a conversation with him, I said, are there any other people that you know that would want to do this? And he gave me another phone number. And so then I had Honky Tonk Man come out. And then Honky Tonk Man put me in touch with Jim Duggan. Now, Jim Duggan holds the record for being at my shop the most. This will be his 9th time. And then Jake the Snake Roberts 4 times. And then the Nasty Boys 2 times. And Tito Santana's been out. And then I'll stop dropping the names. But for people like us, people around our age, this was everything. Now, you asked a question, did I love comics and toys as a kid? Sure, but I didn't have the financial wherewithal. So I couldn't even afford the rubber toys that the one kid whose parents did well had. So now I take these guys to dinner, you know, and the fun part about what we do, the structure of it, is that I'm usually a stop where they piggyback from another appearance.
Right.
So I'm not making money, but I'm not paying money. I'm hanging out with what have essentially become my friends, and they're having a good time, and they keep the money from their pictures and their autographs and things like that. So the day before Father's Day, now it's like a plug, right? June 20th, Hacksaw Jim Duggan will be back. And then July 11th, which is a Saturday, Tito Santana will be back. Man. And it's because his son moved to Rochester, near Rochester, and he's come to visit a couple times because we have that relationship. And I said, let's do a signing for the people. But that's one of the best parts about what I do, because I think I talked about imposter syndrome. Even if I became a multimillionaire, I would still kind of feel like a poor kid who's still insecure about who he is. And I think when I get to do those things, it's wonderful. I think it's a great opportunity for my kids. Like a couple of years ago, a gentleman came upstairs, and he was very tall, and he had a very strong accent, and I'm talking to him, and I go, where do you live? And he said, oh, Tennessee, mate. And I said, by way of what? He goes, Dublin, Ireland. And it was Stephen Fairley. He wrestles as Sheamus. Yeah. And it prompted one of the best friendships I have, because he's a toy guy, because he grew up similar to me, but in Dublin. Wow. And so he can get any toy he wants now. And so the couple years that he was still on this circuit and in this area, he would comp our tickets right next to the ring, which was fun. And then we would go toy hunting or hang out or have a dinner with these other guys. And so for my kids was the point of what I was getting to. It was an amazing opportunity for them to live a life I couldn't have dreamed of as a kid. You know, there were times I would go to concerts as I was getting older, and when you don't know that you pay for the meet and greet or you need to know someone, you kind of wait out in the back with these hopes of like, am I going to get to meet Bruce Springsteen? It's just a name, but no, you're not. That's not going to, and you're not. I mean, you might meet Alice Cooper on the golf course or at Kelly Schultz's Antique World because he likes those things, but the chances are you're not going to get that experience. My kids, they get to have that experience, and so it's a lot of fun for them. Same, I really love Helium Comedy Club, which is close to you. My friend Sean manages it, so people stop by the shop from there when Gilbert Godfrey was alive or people like that, or we get to go to the green room or kind of, sometimes meet them. It's a thrill because a lot of these guys also do the voice of cartoons that my kids love or things like that, or they've appeared in kids' movies. So, and you can tell I'm like lighting up. The camera will show I'm actually, I'm in my real space right now because, well, sometimes you give, the answers that you always give. I think the greatest part about all the stuff upstairs is that it's a way for me to still stay young at heart and for my kids to really have something they connect to and be a part of. And the same with downstairs. I'll tell you, this is 100% true fact. My younger son, Cole, today at his school, it was dressed like the job you want. He wore a Sweet Jenny shirt, apron, and brought a scoop with him. So,
that's awesome.
And it wasn't to make us happy because he's not that kind of kid who just wants to appease us. Trust me. My first one, Carter, I have a college fund for, and my second one, I have a bail fund for. So Cole is not that kind of kid, but that's what he wants. He loves it. Same with Carter. They talk a lot, and I want them to do whatever they want. Certainly, I don't want them to take it over because it's so difficult if they don't want it and they don't love it. But I thought that was very cool that they're not resentful of what we do because, if you're working all the time and you have friends who work all the time, sometimes their kids,
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I
hope I answered.
No, I love that you're lighting up about the wrestlers because I'll tell you, I'm the type of guy where, travel a lot for work and when you're in certain big airports, that's, I think, where like the highest likelihood of running into people. Yeah. And I would never, ever, ever go up to anybody. Like I never do, but there was an exception. And it was like a year and a half ago and I'm sitting down and all of a sudden I'm like, I look over to my left and I'm like, I'm sitting 2 seats down from Mick Foley. And I'm like, I'm definitely saying something. And I started talking to him. He was super nice. Took a photo with me. I'm like firing it off to like all my friends. My friends like, holy shit, like where did you meet? And it's cool. It's like that nostalgia, like you said, whether it's meeting a wrestler or seeing toys you used to have or a toy maybe that you always wanted as a kid and were never able to have. That's pretty cool. It's awesome you're able to weave that in. Do you think so? Talking about your kids, because I couldn't agree with you more. Like my dad, still to this day, he's 72, owns a small masonry company. Loves what he does. And I remember like a couple times early on, like I was like, oh, maybe I should, take this over from you. And he was like, he knew me well enough to know like, you're just saying that because you probably hate law school right now. Or you're like, what am I doing with my life? But this is not a life I want for you. And it's not something that you really want. Sounds like your kids are very, like they love it, which is so amazing. Do you think you'll have trouble letting go at some point? Like, are you going to want to always be around, or do you think you'll be able to like hand them the keys and say, all right, boys, down the road, like it's your show now, run with it?
I can honestly say that I never looked at it framed that way. Also, I heard you cuss and wondered if we could cuss, but it's okay.
Oh yeah, you can.
No, I don't need to right now.
You do whatever you want.
But it's funny because in my mind, I see myself. And it's part of that question. If I found out I was sick, because inevitably I will become unalive. I think that's the term in 2026. I will become unalive at some point. I always see myself still there, like a rust out, like hanging around. But I think I wouldn't mind letting them fix the freezers, call the order the product, get the cream, like what I mean. All the things that we have to do, fight with the distributor, I don't think I'd mind letting go of that especially because, like I said, my first son, my older son, Carter, he's just great at everything. I love both my kids equally, but we each have one, Carter, and people out there, it's true. Don't lie to me. Carter is exactly like me in that he's very analytical. He could read at 3. He plays chess. And Cole is a wrestling fan and he's a lot like my wife. He looks like her. He's super emotional. You could go through the whole day, give him everything he wants, and if you didn't give him one thing, he's like, worst day ever. I'm gonna choke myself. So I think that if they find a balance and they're able to do what I do, because I think it'll take both of them to replace my wife and I, because we each have very different functions in what we do, and we each complement each other at least from a business standpoint. And so I think that it would take both kids to do it. Certainly, to answer your question, I would be happy to just be the figurehead toddling about. I always joke, I say, and people who can see me probably will understand the relevance of this. I just want to be like Danny DeVito. I want to be the same level of short and heavy my whole life. Like, I've basically looked like this for a long time, and I have like a very my look is same mustache, beard. So when people look at pictures, it's hard to tell if it was 10 years ago, 20 or 30 years
Smart
ago.
move.
So if I can a little more gray. Yeah, and I'm shrinking a little bit more every year, but if I can still Danny DeVito my way in, I'd be happy to just walk around, kind of like Frank from Always Sunny, and just without the gun, and just kind of be there and be a character and interact with people and take the pictures, because it's silly, because I have pictures up in the shop with people who have been there, or people we've met at conventions where we sell our chocolates, or people that I've met through Helium. They want to take a picture with me, and it's funny and it's silly. And I mean, I have a face for radio, so I don't really love the pictures, but that's yes. The answer is yes. I'd be happy to step back as long as I know that I've left them something that's they'll be safe and they'll be happy and they'll be fulfilled. Because you said in the midst of our talking, like, lines, it's blowing up, the things. And I always say the same thing to people when they say, wow, you must be so happy you're busy, and I make that same thing. And I always say, I'm always happy we're doing well, but I think ideally for me, I would just want to do well enough to be able to, money's not my ultimate driving force. And I did say that I didn't want to be destitute again, but I also don't want to be filthy rich. I guess I'm not driven to I never want to be a millionaire, right? It's not about the income, it's about the outcome.
Yeah.
It's not about how much money we're making. Is everyone happy? Are we avoiding problems? Am I feeling fulfilled? Are my kids doing well? Like that, I guess, if that makes sense. So I guess to boil that down again, I'll go to that clip I just said. It's not about the income, it's about the outcome. So there are some days where I say, yeah, we're too busy. But what do you do with that? You can't, no, not you guys. Maybe I'll hire a bouncer. Like, oh, you could get ice cream. Hey, I don't know. Like, you were just here yesterday.
Not tall enough.
No,
I've seen you here 50 times this week. Get out of here, kid.
I'm never a heightist. So
yeah, you could become like the Willy Wonka of like Williamsville. You could we would be happy to help you with that. You could layer in some golden tickets.
I thought that's how I was known, but now you're making me question. I thought I was the Willy Wonka. Bro.
The gates and the steam stacks and Slugworth rolling around.
You got it. Yeah. Willy Wonka of Williamsville.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So I have to ask you, because you brought her up several times, about your wife, Tara. She's your wife. She's your business partner. I think obviously you guys have figured it out. Can you talk a little bit about, he's nodding, not shaking his head. So the camera's on me right now, not on you. So that's what you don't realize. Make some noise and the camera will go on you.
No.
There you go. Well, okay. So everyone's always trying to figure it out, but you are in business with your wife. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what would you tell somebody who's considering going into business with their significant other?
So that's a very good question, because we did mention that if you were going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to have your own business, you're going to make sacrifices. I will tell you that if you are going to be in business with your significant other, that balance between work and life is going to be even harder to find, because there's no way to avoid conversations about, like today, for instance. Thank you for setting me up so kind. We're arguing over the right place to put a larger walk-in outside on our site because we've outgrown our space, which keeps happening to us because we keep doing better and better. Thing is, you're always going to have other things that then influence those feelings. But nothing we do in life lives in a vacuum. Even if you're dealing with, you mentioned an associate, there's still a conversation you had with that person where they said something you didn't like, or you see something of yourself reflected in that person that makes you salty, or you have real life experience you'd love to impart to them because you want them to not make the same mistakes you did. So that's amplified 1,000% when you're in business with your spouse. To the people who make it look easy and they never fight and they love it and they're like, oh my God, I love running this artisanal cheese shop with my wife. That's not how it is. We have to always find a way to compromise and to find common ground and to come to the same solutions to problems. We look at things very differently. I'll tell you that for anyone out there who is not married and they're with somebody, having a very different socioeconomic background causes issues throughout your entire marriage because you look at things differently. You are scared of different things. Having a different religious background, right, because of the way that you are morally or the way that you are culturally has a significant impact on your relationship. Having a different, even I'm a 6. Can you guys see me? I mean, that's because my personality. I'm probably a 4 on paper. My wife is a 9. And so I was only able to do that because her personality is terrible. No. So what I'm saying is all these things will impact the decisions you make and how you run your business. You know, she is driven by money, and she does have, she has her law degree, but she also has an MBA, and she also, you know, business is her drive. Very much the bottom line. For me, if ever, and we do, sorry if it seems like I'm meandering. So business for her, people for me. We do a lot of initiatives that then end up fulfilling both of those things. Like we have a Good Neighbors Fund where if you can't afford ice cream, I'll just give it to you. At the holidays, any product we have left, I make an announcement on the news. Just come in, I'll help you. We have a program through Sweet Jenny's where if you are battling cancer or a survivor, I'll give you free ice cream, and so on. And it just keeps going. I don't want to say it kills her, but it's a difficult way for someone to conceptualize getting more business. For me, I understand that if you humanize what you do and you help people, there's a loyalty there that doesn't exist with other things. Mm-hmm. And it also is good promotion. It's what I call earned media. I don't need to pay to win a best of, or I don't need to, you know, go out and because we're making waves, we're doing things, we're helping people. Why do I bring that up? Not to, you know, tell people about our programs, although feel free to avail yourselves of them. It's that is like at its core, our stumbling block that for her, you know, how many of this did we sell? How can we do this? What is it? And for me, it's like, how many people did we make happy? You know, how many people were satisfied? Like how many people's lives can we touch in a way that it's a positive experience for them? And I lean into that very hard on our social media. I run all of our social media, and it's almost like in a very silly way, the movie with Jack Nicholson where they go like, how do you write women? People come in and they go, oh, your wife does all this because the social media. And I go, no, I do it because I do try to share things that make people feel better about what's going on, to feel seen, to feel loved, because I'm awkward in person, but able to do that. You know, I'm kind of like brave in that way to bear myself. And with our social media, it's that kind of outreach. And to her, sometimes why I'm mentioning this is she's like, well, no one's going to, like, that's silly. Like just post a picture of an ice cream cone. So all these things that I'm saying to tell you, we don't have it all figured out. Even when it comes to rudimentary things like marketing and programs and ordering, we do have stumbling blocks to agreeing on things. But in some ways, I think it's better. And now probably 6.5 minutes ago, because I talk so much, I said when my kids take over, it'll take both of them. It's the same thing. Right. She's right in that I should probably worry about margins more and raising prices sometimes because the world around us, cacao prices go up. I should pay attention to that. You know, my drive is always like, oh, well, I don't want people to pay more, but then we'd be out of business. Yeah. So there has to be that balance in between. I hope that answers that.
No, it does. And I think, I think, right, like it's good to hear, like, I wanted to hear the story, right? Because there's more context there. Because like ultimately, what the message ends up being delivered is be careful about the partner you pick for business
and life,
and for life for sure, right? Because like especially in business, I think you need if both people are that like data driven, margin driven kind of person, or both people are like the hey, let's do the good stuff in the community, build the brand ambassador kind of thing. Like if you don't have like the marrying of it,
you'll fail
with the inevitable friction that it comes with. Like you will fail.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's a good point. So see, I said something useful, guys. Find a nice person and a mean person. No, I'm just joking.
Look,
it's all about balance.
I'm gonna tell you right now, man. Like I know everyone in this room, a lot of people in this room are gonna agree with me. I think I know people are gonna love this conversation. So we're almost done.
No, I'm here all day. I cleared the rest of my day. I don't ever want to leave.
Like different people are going to come in and ask you questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm a Scorpio.
Yeah. Can we have an ice cream question at some point?
Yeah. Well, so I was going to ask, it was going to be one of my final questions. But when it comes to ice cream, what's something about like the process that you think people don't know or people would be interested to know about? Because, whether we're kids, we're adults, we're with our kids, we're just adults. having ice cream, we just see like this finished product. And I just heard you talk about different things throughout the course of this conversation. Like there's a lot that goes into this. What do you think is like the biggest unknown, or what do you think you wish people knew?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that makes me sad is that a lot of people don't know we make our own ice cream, and we have since 1985. So despite the fact that people could have been coming there for years, and I think we always mention it, we put it into articles, and I think people sometimes still have this concept that all places just sell around here, Perry's, downstate Stewards, or places like that ice cream. But no, so what I would want people to know first and foremost is that we make our ice cream because we have so many flavors at any given time. Second is that you don't need to be a traditional ice cream person to love what we do because there's so much variety. And we have vegan options. We have sorbets, which are fruit and sugar. So now it seems like a commercial. But what I'm saying is it's not like when you were a kid and it's like, okay, vanilla chocolate or strawberry, right? Or it's not where it's just like ice milk and you go to a very famous place. Yeah. You know, I don't want to cast aspersions on any places. Those places are great too. It's small batch. It's artisanal. We use local cream. It comes from upstate farms. It's our own amount of butterfat because, I mean, that's important too. You know what I mean? So the cream has to have like a certain fat content. So like everything we do is unique. Everything we do is on site, which is cool. You can look through the window when you come in and see it. Everything we do, a lot of thought goes into it. We try to have the flavors that people request the most. So that would be what I want people to know, I guess, that it's not just, okay, it's ice cream. It's not just that. You know, it's like if you go to a restaurant and you really love the way that they make, you know, the whatever. I don't eat out. What are people eating at restaurants nowadays? I don't know. So
there's a lot of stuff.
But you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of love. And the ice cream makers that we have, they take it so seriously. And I love that. And I love that even if we're putting in ingredients, like our honey comes from Fairy Tale Farms in East Aurora. Like the things that we use, we source locally if we can. And even when flavors we're so excited about cost us money, like if we do the Jack Daniels or we do the bourbon butter pecan with the cost of alcohol, we lose money. But it's fun because people are enjoying it. They're buying other things. They're having an experience. You know, there's ways to get around that. But so I guess I hope I answered the question.
You did.
Just the uniqueness of it. And I guess the fact that it is, made by us and it is artisanal, which was a lot bigger a thing a couple of years ago. Now I think we're just like, what can I afford? Before it was like, what is local and what is small batch? And now it's just like gas is $80 a week and sandwiches are $14 and coffee's $9. So but I want people to be able to know that they can afford it and it's awesome.
Hey, so if I pretend I work at Sweet Jenny's and I am somehow in a position where I get to suggest new flavors. Yeah. Can you tell right off the bat when someone suggests something like there's no way we could do that or and then like what's the process for trying to figure out if you could do it and like whether it's from a cost perspective or just like it'll actually taste good? Like how do you I guess the question is how do you create new flavors?
No, that's interesting, and I actually was joking about this yesterday because again, I need to always circle back to your question. Okay. I think the most unfortunate part of what we do and owning a small business in general right now is that people are more likely to leave you a bad review if they've had a bad experience than they are if something's great. You could walk somebody's aged mother down the stairs to the car, put them in, give them a kiss on the forehead, and they're just like, wow, that was cool. You could have somebody wait for 11 minutes online and then you didn't have the flavor they want, and then that's a 1-star. To me, a 1-star is you like ate glass and then you had to go to the emergency room and then the glass had to come out in a not fun way, and then that's like a 1-star experience. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, I think waiting for 11 minutes is probably 4. But anyway, my point is that there's no control over that. So anybody can write anything, do anything, whatever. So what I was talking about yesterday is I said to someone in a joking way, someone could come in and say to me, you really need to make lobster ice cream. I had it in Maine. It'll be great. And I'll go, well, I don't know that it's not going to be very fresh. And I don't know. I mean, I could go behind us to Glen Falls and make like Crawdad ice cream. But what I'm saying is, so not every idea has legitimacy, not every idea has value, and not every idea is valid. And a lot of people will do that. Like, I was recently on vacation and I really love this, whatever. And you're like, yeah, I can't do it. So my wife, myself, and the ice cream makers know if we can do it based on how feasible it is to be able to get the ingredients, the freezing point, because there's a science to it. We used to teach classes on chocolate, tannins, flavonoids, all that stuff, melting point, 98.6 degrees human body, at like wine places and for tastings. Same thing with ice cream. Like there's classes that you can attend, which we did, that teach you how to properly do things. Our peanut butter ice cream, there's a freezing point for the peanut butter we use. It's not like blended in, it's real peanut butter. There's things that you can do, and then I'm not Dr. Frankenstein. I can't do certain things. So yes, from a practical standpoint, some things aren't cost effective. From the standpoint of being able to put things in that would taste terrible, or if you said to me, I really want like this cereal, if it's not going to be able to stay crunchy, if it's going to get soggy, if the material's not going to work. But you said, do you experiment a lot? Yes, we also experiment with things that we think are good ideas, and sometimes they're not. So there's pints or quarts in the back that say test, and then someone will try them, and ultimately my wife and I have, the final say on those things, but,
Well, even in there is a good lesson, right, for business owners, like start small, test it out.
Yeah.
Figure it out as you go. You gotta be careful. And I love that because I'm thinking about like the process, and I was thinking actually before I started talking to you, I was like, man, I have a really bad sweet tooth. It would be a nightmare for me.
But what's your idea? You want a flavor named after you?
Maybe we can work on this. I know there's somebody in this room who wants probably a cannabis infused ice cream. Right. I'm not going to name who that is, but
not here.
It sounds sticky.
Person,
sounds sticky.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, man, this has been awesome. I appreciate your time. Sure. If people, I think most people, and I honestly mean this, know exactly where Sweet Jenny's is, but you guys are right there in the village of
56 East Spring Street, Williamsville, 14221.
And where can they find you on social media? What are your handles?
So I run it. I know how to use it, but I'm a neophyte with technology. I can tell you that we are on Facebook, Instagram. What's the thing that the kids use? TikTok. Under Sweet Jenny's and 1811 Comics. So Sweet Jenny's is on all those things. You can just look for us. And on Facebook, we actually have like 40,000 followers on Facebook. And then on Instagram, same things. It's funny when people come in and we've made a particularly beautiful banana split or a beautiful ice cream for the younger folks. I always go, put that on Fotchbook or Instaface or whatever you kids use. But we do have in the shop the little symbols where you could go directly to those things.
And people will see like on the 1811 pages, like when people are coming through and that kind of thing.
I just did a post about the Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which I hope I see you and your friend there on the day before Father's Day.
I'm bringing them.
Bring your kids. And and the Tito Santana thing, you were the first to know. I just got the text from he and his wife yesterday, so I didn't put anything up on the socials yet. So you heard it here first, folks.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man. This was great.
No problem.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, everybody, that's a wrap on this episode of Angles. I appreciate you listening in as always. And look, I just have one small favor to ask of you. If you got value out of this episode, please go on, whether you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever, like, subscribe, leave us a review, share this with your friends. Doing this makes the podcast more visible, ensures we can keep running this, we can keep getting great guests to tell these great stories. So again, if you've gotten any benefit out of this, share with a friend, your family member, whoever. We really appreciate it. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you on the next one.